What's going on YouTube? This is Ericets for the win, and this is going to be my Gears of War 4 review. It's mostly going to be about the campaign with a little bit of multiplayer sprinkled in here. I still feel like I need to play more, so it's more about a review in progress when it comes to the multiplayer. And just so you guys know, in case you're new or you don't really know my history with Gears of War, I've played all of the multiplayers for every game. I've played every campaign. I've been a fan since the first original game. So I'm pretty loyal and I'm pretty much aware of the history when it comes to Gears of War. I know how important this game is in terms of getting the approval when it comes to the hardcore fans, the veterans, the people like me who have been around for a long time. We went through an amazing trilogy, the original trilogy, and we still hold that dear to our hearts. And then we also went through the awkward phase of Judgment, the spin-off that came out not too long ago, about 3 years ago. This game right here, Gears of War 4, has very large shoes to fill because there's a lot of nostalgia that is a hell of a drug for many of us. And just the fact that the original trilogy was just really good, and it really set the standard for what a really good Gears of War game can be. Myself personally, Gears of War 2 was my favorite, and so I tried to keep that in mind, the fact that, you know, this game has a very hard chance to touch that game because Gears of War 2 just meant that much to me. It was just my favorite. There's just so many things I love about it, but I tried to look at this game as a new start to a new trilogy and just answering the questions of, is this a good start? Is there something to build upon here? Is this the game that should have came instead of Judgment? And I could definitely say yes to that right up front. I'll tell you guys that for sure. Anything's better than Judgment. But that doesn't mean I can sit here and give this game any passes. It doesn't mean I can say, oh, well, it's better than Judgment, so anything is good enough. No, I'm gonna still tell you guys the truth, what I feel about the game. Let's just go ahead and get into it. Let me start off by saying that Gears of War 4 does a lot of things right in terms of satisfying myself as a Gears of War fan, my inner Gears desires when it comes to really epic environments. And just those oh wow moments where I got my jaw dropped, I'm excited, I'm having a good time. It's like a joyride at times. And I really do feel like Gears of War 4 captured that in many ways. When it comes to the graphics and the audio as well, there's a lot being done right here, and we'll get into that in a bit. But I want to talk about the missteps in this game, what I think keeps this game from being great. Because it is a good game, it's a solid campaign, a decent story, but I have some issues and some gripes that really keep this game from becoming any more than just decent and solid. So let's get into that right now. First thing that I definitely want to talk about is the character development and the story. I know Gears of War is not some deep story that, gets awards across the board because it has the most amazing storytelling, but Gears of War has always been noted for having heart. I've always felt like when it comes to the Gears of War stories, especially the original trilogy, that there was a lot of insight between the relationships of the characters, just their backgrounds and what connected them, what mattered, what made us care about them. There was always something there to make us care. But when it comes to Gears of War 4, I didn't really feel that. Kate, for example, she's a supporting character, but her story and her motivations are really what drives a lot of this story in the game. And because of that, it was very important for her character to be developed in a way to where we actually cared. And I just really didn't feel that for Kate. Her motivation for even being in this fight is a big one, but because we don't really get insight into that relationship between her and another character, there's really no flashbacks, there's really no kind of moments that make us attached to these characters. I just felt like there could have been more background. And so when it got to the end of the game and it escalates and something happens, I'm not going to spoil it for you guys, I felt like I should have been much more emotionally invested than I was. I felt like I should have felt something, but I just didn't. The only time I actually felt emotional and got a little choked up was when Marcus said, "I know how that feels," because something happens, and that was his way to kind of comfort her. And when he said that, I immediately thought of Dom. And it got to my feelings because there's so much insight already to that relationship between him and Dom. We've seen what happened. We went through it with them. And I know this is the first game and it could develop later. There could be more. It could get a lot better. But still, I feel like that definitely stood out to me. I just felt like the development for this character, Kate, just wasn't very good. Del as well wasn't really that great either. I felt like, honestly, most of the time, I felt like he wasn't even there. There were times where I just felt like, man, he is the total definition of supporting background character, because he really was just background noise. He was filler dialogue in between when they were going to, place to place, and then he was just backup, to the actual fight. He was there to shoot, and that was pretty much it.
So Del, he said kings are buried down here. Well, that guy was definitely king of something.
I just didn't really see much with this character to make him stand out. Because in the past, we had supporting characters like Baird and Cole, and yes, the stories didn't exactly revolve around them, with the exception of Judgment, but we knew who they were. We cared about who they were. Freaking Baird was a total a-hole, but that was him. And Cole, he had his own personality as well. He had his whole background with being a football player and all of that, or a thrashball player, I should say. And there was background to these guys. And I know that came through the 3, games, and eventually, it all came together. So I'm hoping that's what happens here. But I still feel like the beginning of this journey just fell flat for these characters. I just felt like they didn't really stand out. They weren't very likable. I didn't hate them, but I mean, they just weren't, some characters that I was really attached to. It didn't happen that way. JD, on the other hand, the protagonist, the main guy, he's awesome. I really liked JD. Of course, the background there is a given. He's Marcus's son, so obviously we're going to have some kind of feelings towards this. I mean, myself personally, I'm a big Marcus fan, so just seeing JD and Marcus interact was great. I really enjoyed that. There's a lot of resentment going on. There's like some father-son issues, and they really tackle some kind of personal issues. They talk about things that are kind of like, wow, they're talking about this. This is crazy. So it's kind of nice to see that, and I appreciated that.
Not a goddamn word.
I think it just would have been a lot better if they showed some more background stuff, some more flashbacks possibly. They could have took a page from the original trilogy when you had the situation with Dom and Maria. We got to see flashbacks. We got to see insight to the relationship, and it made us care. So I just felt like the development for these characters really fell flat, and it just could have been a lot better. But I don't want to ramble too long. You guys get the point. This was pretty disappointing for me. It didn't ruin the campaign, but it's definitely a negative in my opinion. The graphics and the audio, like I briefly mentioned, they do that right in this game. I actually gave it a 10 when it came to my written review. I gave this section a perfect 10 because the graphics are gorgeous. I know it's 2016. We see graphics that look gorgeous all the time. But when it comes to the Gears of War series, I mean, there's a lot of really gorgeous graphics here and stuff that had me just kind of looking around and marveling at what was around me. There were times I actually stopped playing just to look at the backgrounds or just to look at, little details here and there. And the audio is totally Gears of War. That's the best way I could actually describe it, is that it's just so Gears of War. When it comes to the sound effects, when it comes to the music. I know the composer for Game of Thrones actually worked on the music for this game, and you guys know I'm a big Game of Thrones fan, so I was very happy when I learned about that. And the quality definitely shows in the music. The soundtrack is awesome. I felt like the sound effects going on at the same time with the music, it was just perfect. The guns sound really good. The explosions sound really good. The voice acting was great. Even though, like I said, the characters weren't really developed the way I wanted, they still had great voice acting. So yeah, the graphics and the audio, perfect 10 for me. The only exception was the Hammer of Dawn. I felt like it wasn't as impacting, it wasn't as loud as I remember. I remember the first couple of games, or the whole trilogy actually. I remember the Hammer of Dawn just booming, and it was kind of scary when it would come down. It would just hit, you know what I mean? And I didn't really get that in this game. So with that exception, everything else was really, really good and really done well in terms of sound effects and the music, of course. I really, really enjoyed it in this game. As for the meat and potatoes of Gears of War 4, the gameplay, it's so buttery smooth, especially multiplayer, if you're not having any lag or anything going on. But when it works, great. It's buttery smooth. The 60 frames per second definitely make a difference. If you've played all the multiplayers up until this point, you notice it right away. It just feels so smooth. And the wall bouncing is unreal at times. It's just, I feel like there's a lot of control here. And then even in the campaign, it's pretty easy to get in and out of cover, and as with any Gears of War game, cover is very important. And they do have some creative ways of having cover in this game. There's this part where there's like these huge chains that are constantly moving because of some, I don't know, some machine or something like that, and you have to kind of work your way back and forth to the chains that are actually there to take cover on. So there's been moments like that. There's been moments where you can take cover on pods of this nasty stuff that the Swarm has created, where they actually harvest people. It's pretty disgusting, but you can take cover on them, and then you can shoot them as well, and the enemies can shoot your cover, and it's pretty crazy. So cover is definitely more evolutionary in this game, I guess. And that usually happens with all Gears of War games. There's always some kind of creative way for cover, and because, you know, it's the core of the gameplay. And so that's definitely here. The weapons, of course, we have our faithful shotgun, we have our Lancer, we have our Hammer Burst. Retro Lancers, those are back as well. But then we also have some new weapons. We have the Drop Shot, we have the Buzzkill, and then also a combat knife. And that allows you to do some crazy, stylish executions. And you can actually do that by pulling enemies over cover, and then you can perform an execution. So there's some new moves going on here. I don't think there's anything yet to kind of set off the balance for multiplayer, and it all kind of meshes well. So campaign and multiplayer, I feel like all the new weapons, along with the classic weapons, they all mix pretty well. At least so far, because multiplayer, I mean, that could change within seconds. We never know. You know, things happen. But for right now, as it stands, I'm feeling like all these weapons are pretty balanced and they mix together pretty well. My one major gripe with the gameplay on the campaign was the forced Horde elements. I like Horde as a standalone mode. I was just playing it last night, actually had a blast. But when it's forced into the campaign, it just kind of broke the flow for me. I felt like it broke the tension, it broke the momentum. There were times where I would go on this crazy epic moment, and then the next minute I have to build fortifications again, and I have to wait for waves of enemies. And it was essentially Horde, pretty much, and I just felt like it kind of just broke the mood for me. And by the third time, I think there's 3 times overall in the game, by that third time it happened, I just dreaded it completely. I don't really know why they did this. I'm not saying it's the worst thing in the world, because obviously Horde, it does belong in the Gears universe, but I'm just not so sure it belongs in the campaign. It just didn't really do it for me. I just felt like it was kind of out of place a little bit. So that was kind of my major gripe with the campaign in terms of the gameplay and what we were doing. I just didn't really like how the Horde elements were kind of forced in there. Like I said, it's not the worst thing in the world, but it's definitely not the best. So that's probably the main complaint I have in terms of the gameplay. But other than that, you guys, I mean, it's like I said, it's really smooth. It feels good. It definitely feels like an evolution of Gears of War when it comes to the movement, the guns. When you really look at Gears for its face value, and you look at the graphics, you look at the gameplay, you look at what's going on with these enemies, you know, with the Swarm and the DBs, there's obviously evolution happening right now. We see how far it's come and how much it's changed. And that is impressive alone. There's some really impressive things about this game. I also wanted to mention the AI. Even when it comes to my teammates, there's varieties. I actually felt like with Kate and Del and even Marcus, they had different varieties of skills. Like, for example, Marcus, who's a total badass and how we all pretty much imagine him, he was leading the pack. He was leading the group into battle. And most of the time he would be in front, you know, and he would have no problems taking guys out. And he was usually the one who would revive me if I went down. Del was kind of similar as well. I didn't really have to worry about him. He pretty much handled his own. He took care of himself. But Kate, on the other hand, was a little more reliant on us. She would hide a little bit more. I felt like she was always asking for help. And I don't know if that's because, you know, she's a girl or that's her personality. That's who she is. She does need a lot of help. And that kind of got annoying at times. I actually referred to her as Slippy. If you guys have played Star Fox in the past, I mean, Slippy is like the most annoying character. He always needs help. So Kate is kind of that character in this game. And I just thought it was impressive though, regardless of how annoying she was at times. It was still impressive because it showed a variety between them in terms of skill. And even the enemies, the AI enemies, I felt like they were smarter, especially the Swarm. They were definitely smarter than the Locust of past. I just felt like they were more evolved. And so the Coalition, I feel like they really need to be commended for this. And even the guys back at Epic and the ones that aren't even there anymore. When it came to Gears of War, I've always felt like the AI weren't always stupid. Some of them were, but they were pretty smart. And in comparison with other games, I know there's some games out there with really awful AI. Gears of War puts them to shame, you know what I mean? Like Gears of War stands out. And this game definitely does that. Like it really pushes how smart AI can be. So I just really thought that was commendable. I wanted to point that out in this review. As far as my verdict, you guys, if you want to read my written review, I have a full fleshed out review. You can see more points that I probably forgot in this video. You can check that out. I'll put that in my description. But I ended up giving the game an 8.5. I think it's a solid score for a solid game. You know, I think it's a decent score. And that's really what this game is. It's solid. It's nothing amazing. It's not bad. It's good and it's solid. I think it's a good start to this next trilogy. I think there's a lot here to build upon. There's a couple twists in the story, especially at the end. There's a big one. And I think that's really good for them to build on. And I'm hoping for that. I'm really thinking that the twist, along with a couple, characters that are involved, really can get fleshed out later. That's my hope. And I really do think the Coalition did a great job on giving us something to build upon, giving us something to look forward to. And with a great multiplayer to kind of complement this solid, decent story and decent campaign, it's a good game. Gears of War 4, there's a lot of stuff here. There's a lot of content and plenty for you to be coming back to. And so because of that, I did give it an 8.5. I think that's a decent score. It's just the perfect score for me. So I hope you guys really enjoyed this review. I had to do it twice. My first one, I was pretty much reading off of my written review, and I did not like that. And I'm pretty sure you guys wouldn't like that either. When it comes to reviews, I like it more like this, where I'm just talking to you guys and I'm using notes, but I don't like reading. So I don't know why I did that the first time. I guess I was just pressed for time, and it just kind of felt like the easy way, but I like this better. So again, thank you for watching this video. Thank you for the support, and I will catch you guys in my next video. Until then, take care, and I'll catch you guys later. Peace.
Gotcha! Uh-oh. Oh, boy.